why would I be anything else when I could be me? No, but seriously, like, I could just do me, Like, I could just live my life as me. Just whole, complete, just myself. Unabridged.
And hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Unabridged. I am your host, Don Miller, and I am so excited to be joining you all today from my at-home studio. We are in for a really good episode. I probably say that every episode, but I think it's going to be a good one. I think that, last time around we got into some really important topics, and I'm going to do some follow ups in this episode for some of the things we got into last week. And we also have an amazing episode interview today with Miss Darrien Johnson, aka the community curator. But before we jump into the episode, I just want to do a little mini check in because I think, something I want to stay true to while doing this show is, I keep talking about how this is a personal journey for me. So it's like, well, let's do a little check in. And I think that something that has been consistent right now in my journey that I am working through right now is delegating. Like, delegating across the board. People have been checking me about my ability or lack thereof to delegate. And I think that that is something that I'm really going to focus on, not just in this final quarter as we go into October, but really just moving forward. And delegating in terms of, really just not having to take on everything for myself. And I think that that has been something that has really been blocking me from really diving into this idea of truly being unabridged, truly being able to live a life that is for me. So delegation is truly the term, the vibe for the rest of this quarter. So I'm really excited to get into that. And I promise I'll kind of like share an update as we go through this. But again, want to make sure that we're checking in and that, we're making sure that this is truly a personal journey. But let's get into our first segment for today, which is one of my favorites, even though it's only two. One of my favorite segments. Let's get into it.
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 All right, yes, let's get into it. I actually love that sound. A little like background about that sound. That's probably like 7 or 8 people that I really love so much, and I literally text them and I was like, hey, like just like record yourself saying let's get into it, like, and just send it to me. Like, and I just randomly sent it to them, and a good amount of people. Shout out to AP, shout out to Vanessa, Tati, Jack, Kelly Ann, Aloe. Who else is on there? I think that's it. And Max, for just really just responding to that and helping me make my little cute little intro. But anyway, let's get into it. So we have a lot to talk about. So I said earlier that we were going to do a quick update episode, a quick little update of what we talked about in our last episode. And I think this is really important. I'm not going to go too much into it because we have a lot to talk about, but beginning with the safe injection site issue we talked about last week. So we talked about how council passed the legislation that would require for individuals to be able to, in order to open up a safe injection site, that they would have to go through a level of a community process similar to a zoning process. The mayor soon after actually vetoed that bill, meaning that, he's completely not for it. The mayor has the ability to do that. The executive branch has the ability to do that. The governor does. All of the executive branches have the ability to veto. So what happens is that the bill got sent back to city council, and what we have the ability, I keep saying what city council has the ability to do is to override the mayor's veto by having a super majority, and they were actually able to do that. So city council actually overrided that mayor's veto, and the bill is going to be going into effect. And again, the bill is just a complete insertion of community voices into the process. That is all the bill is about. And I think that that's probably one thing that we are missing through this process and people aren't really understanding. But again, I know that this issue is very touchy. And again, we'll keep updating as we hear more about it. So more for local politics because a lot has happened this time around. I'm not really going to talk too much about council because really big viral things happen. And I always hate when Philly goes viral for negative things. I'm like, how come we can't go viral for the good things that we do? We have a lot of good things that go on here. But yes, unfortunately we went viral, and two big things happen in the city right now that I think that I have to talk about. So the first one, so Eddie Azeri was a young Latino man who actually was killed by Officer Mark Dale on August 14th. And this was a very tragic incident across the city of Philadelphia. And Mr. Dale, or Officer Dale, or former Officer Dale, was charged by Larry Krasner, charged by the district attorney's office, and immediately he was let go of his job by Commissioner Outlaw at the time, who was the commissioner at the time, and was charged. On a recent trial, actually on October 3rd, the charges were actually dropped in the municipal court. Mr. Dale was charged with murder. He was charged with aggravated assault, voluntary manslaughter, and reckless endangerment. Um, this incident was really interesting because, I think when you hear about a lot of police involved shootings, they seem really distant in the city of Philadelphia. And now, they're right here at home, and that video footage was shared a lot. A trigger warning, I'm not just going to like add it in the notes, but one of the notes that I do add to kind of, or to prepare for the show, and the sources I provide does show the body cam footage of what happened. And that incident was really heart wrenching. The way that the officers described it, or what originally happened, was that they felt that Mr. Azuri, or they said that Mr. Azuri had two weapons on him. Originally, they said he had guns, but upon further investigation, they realized that it was two knives. The officer's story, along with his partner, so Officer Dial and his partner, said that the handle of the knives looked like guns, so that is why that they reacted in that way. And during the trial, his partner did testify that he did yell, gun, 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 and that is why apparently Mr. Dow shot at Mr. Azeri. The judge felt like that was enough of a probable cause to drop the charges, so that is why all the charges were dismissed. However, the district attorney did refile the charges in the common pleas court, meaning that it was filed in a higher court, which happens consistently, happens pretty often whenever that they feel like there was not a just ruling by the court, so they'll take it to a higher court, and this could go all the way as high as the Supreme Court. So I think that this is nowhere near the ending for this, and we have a long way to go. I think that unfortunately, when we see police involved shootings, we really get a test or a climate of our society. We really see where people are from the responses, from the way that different levels of either our government or our communities respond. And I think it's very telling of our communities. One thing that happened immediately after was a peaceful protest from individuals that took place actually at City Hall. In response to this ruling, a peaceful protest took place. Later that night, though, unfortunately, individuals used that beginning as a chance to loot. I didn't want to do too much about the looting, right? I felt like too many people covered it, and I didn't want to go too much into that because that was not what this was for, right? They were there. Individuals were there. They gathered peacefully to really talk about the injustice that they felt that happened. That I honestly agree with them. I think that it is ridiculous that she dropped all the charges, and I think that the way that they gathered was just. However, what happened later on that evening was something that was just completely ridiculous. So I didn't want to give it too much light. If you want to look into that, you can Google it. There was plenty of TikToks and whatnot that happened afterwards. But yes, so moral of the story is the charges were dropped against former Officer Dale. And but they will refile again in the common pleas court. So we'll see what happens, and we're gonna keep you guys updated as that trial continues. Next up, another sad story, but I think it ends up having a good ending, unfortunately. A young lady named Nikki Bullock was confronted by a biker on October 3rd while delivering food with her children and her girlfriend. We all saw this video. This crazy biker, because of a massive amount of bikers were driving around the City Hall circle. If you guys aren't from Philadelphia, there's a big circle around City Hall. It gets a little crazy when you're driving around there. This biker crashed into the back of her car. I guess he felt as though he ran into her or she ran into him. So at the stoplight, when they stopped, this young man gets off of his bike and jumps on the back of her windshield. This and crashes it in. Mind you, she has 2 little babies. I think their ages are 2 and 5, sitting in the back seat. She gets out of the car and confronts this young man. As this is happening, a gun falls out of this crazy man's pocket. Falls right out of his pocket, and she still keeps coming at him. So thank God nothing happened to her. He ended up headbutting her like a little B word that he is, and then rides off on his bike. It was ridiculous. Of course, she can't drive back on her car. Their family ends up walking away. This is a terrible incident, and it's just a sign that, like, we need to do something about bikers in the city of Philadelphia. And prior to this incident, I used to be like, we need to, like, the bikers, yes, they are a part of Philadelphia culture. Like, we need to get them something for them to do. But I'm like, if this is the type of stuff that they're going to allow, which I say they allow, because if you look at the video, there were other bikers that swarmed around as if they were going to, like, join in the fight. Like, this is not something, this level of protection. Like, the fact is that now there has been news stories that's been released that the police are cracking down on motorbikes. They are looking for unregistered vehicles and ATVs and things of that nature because of this incident. And that kind of put a battery in their back. They didn't kind of like tell him to chill out or calm down, and not saying that they had to have some level of law and order for this gentleman, but they could have had a little internal checking to say that this is not what bike culture is about. But no, they surrounded this young man, looked at this young lady too, and I just thought that was completely out of pocket. Fortunately enough, thank God for social media, thank God for everybody that kind of wrapped around this young lady and her family. They actually were able to identify who this young man was, and let me not get this incorrect, so that way Cody Heron, 26-year-old Cody Heron, has been, they have found this young man, they got him, they are charging him, they're charging him for that gun, charging him for the violent incident against the young lady, charging him for jumping on the back of her car. So Mr. Heron, you're definitely going to serve some time, as you deserve, because how dare you? Like, you know how that circle gets crazy, and if you can't ride a bike, don't be riding a bike through Center City. Like, that's just ridiculous. Shout out to social media, because that's literally how they identify him. I think they, like, looked up his tattoos and all this other stuff like that, but the girls found him, and that is what's up. And they also found, who Miss Nikki was, and they wrapped around her. I think they started, like, some GoFundMes and whatnot for her family and to help her get her car fixed, because, if you're delivering food, that is a major, source for you in revenue. So shout out to Miss Nikki. I hope that she is okay, and hopefully Mr. Heron serves some good amount of time, because he deserves it. All right. Sorry, I get really excited, y'all, when I talk really fast when I get excited. On whatever device y'all watching this, they have unless you're watching on YouTube, I'm sorry, they do have a, like, slow down speed button. So definitely exercise that when you are on the unabridged journey, because we get excited and we kind of get into the fast talking. I can't help it. I was raised around a lot of Jamaican ladies speaking patois. Moving along on the stateside girlies, I have just one I want to talk about today, because look, we are already on 13 and we still have a whole other section to talk about, so we're trying to keep it tight. The primary date change drama, girl. The tea is heavy with this primary date change. All right, so the original date of the Democratic primary, or just the general primary for next year, right, which is an important primary date. This is an election year primary date. Like, Biden will be on the ticket during this primary. It's been a big debacle because its original date, which is April 22nd, falls over Passover. And Passover is like the Jewish Christmas, girl. Like, this is major. It's like you just put election date on Christmas. You can't do that. So every other state, like 5 other states have already changed this. They're like, this is not that difficult, except for Pennsylvania. So on October 5th, the House moved forward to actually get the date changed from October 23rd to April 23rd to April 2nd. That should be fine. But it's not, because this literally should have been done months ago. And the reason why it should have been done months ago and why it has not been is because while they were trying to change the date, they were like, the members of the House tried to tack on these random voter rights reforms that people were not feeling. They were trying to put on reform about new voter ID. And what new voter ID means is that you will now have to have a identification card anytime that you go to vote. And not everybody has an ID. Like, people don't realize that. And a lot of people who don't have IDs, some end up being Democrats. So that would be a major hit for us if we had to expand voter ID. Like, imagine every time having to go vote, you had to identify or have an identification card. It actually becomes a major deterrent. The other thing they tried to add on to it, which actually isn't terrible, but people still were not messing with it, was a pre-canvassing bill. And what pre-canvassing means is, excuse me if I'm hitting her mic, pre-canvassing means that like the election officials who actually open up and count the ballots can count the ballots prior to election night. The way the rule stands right now is that, now whenever people get a whole bunch of mail-in ballots, or whenever the commissioners get a whole bunch of mail-in ballots, they cannot open them until election night when the polls close, which is a master and cumbersome task, because you're counting like thousands upon thousands in that one night in a fast time period, because people want to know what the results are by that evening. And the last thing they tried to do was to remove the dating requirement on the mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots has been such a testy topic since its inception. Like it's been yes, no, do we date them? Who sends them in? When can we open them? Where can we drop them off? It's just been such a cluster to just be like doing what other places like Colorado have been doing for over a decade at this point. It's like, get it together, Pennsylvania. We are always the last for anything. Sorry. Little tangent, moving on. But yes, they were trying to also remove the dating requirement for mail-in ballots. Prior, it was if you didn't date your ballot after your signature on your mail-in ballot, they were throwing them girls out, meaning your vote did not count because you did not date it. Could you imagine that? Anyway, they did it for a lot. I'm going to try to find an article where they had the numbers in there because it was kind of crazy. But anyway, they still ended up introducing this bill late because they finally were able to figure out what they're going to do with those reforms. They kind of settled for a lighter voter ID. I think that they decided against pre-canvassing. But the reason why this is so dramatic is because election day takes time for planning. Like, the individuals that put this together don't have these massive amounts of resources like you think that they would. Our commissioners work very hard to put these things together. Just think about the massive amount of printing out mail-in ballots, getting them to individuals, figuring out who's actually going to work at all the polling places. Places like Philadelphia, like cities like Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, so Pittsburgh and other counties like that, have thousands of polling places across their counties. Thousands of them. And at each of those polling places, there's judges of elections, there's individuals that check you in. Like, there's thousands of those people who have to be hired. So getting ready for election day takes time. And usually in the past, if you're going to change the date of a primary, you have a year. If they change this right now and it goes forward, they're likely not going to be able to get a bill to change the date on Josh Shapiro's desk till late October. That gives them less than 6 months to get everything ready for election day. Come on. This is ridiculous. People are already concerned. We already have like election day workers who don't want to work the polls ever since the Trump debacle. And for those of you who don't know, election day workers were under major threat during the Trump time. I mean, we hear about the stories about him, yelling at these top commissioners and whatnot about finding votes so that way he actually could have won and beat Biden. But his followers were also harassing these moms and pop-pops and, aunties and, people who were just volunteering to work at election day polls. These people don't make no money. They make $100, maybe $2 if they work in a good space. Maybe they get lunch or something like that. Or if elected officials are nice, they'll come by and bring them snacks. But that's all they do. And they maintain our democracy. So it becomes a massive, cumbersome task to find people to fill these roles. And they're giving them a tight window. We understand why they are, but it's just like, we could have got this together a while ago. I just never understand. And I think it's just because when you transition from smaller government bodies that have a major majority to these massive bodies like the House and the Senate that have like, I don't want to say a good divide because our divide is not that great. Republicans, Democrats, it just becomes such a sticky mess. And I'm just like, I cannot even imagine what that is like. You're debating and what my mind feels like some very basic stuff around what it means to protect our democracy and what it means to protect people's rights and abilities to participate in our democracy. Girl, get it together. Come on, we need to know when election day is. And those poor candidates, they don't even know when they have to circulate their petitions. It's a ripple effect. Everything in government is a ripple effect, and it's wild. We're going to talk about it. We're going to keep going, and I'll post on there when they figure out the primary because again, we had to get Pop across because we have work to do. Okay, speaking of Pop and the federal girlies, we're going to talk about our last one, and I always say I want to start out on a good note, but I will not be starting out ending out on a good note, but I will not be ending out on a good note today. I will be ending out on a pretty traumatic one. Starting out with ending off with a pretty dramatic one at the federal level. So, for those of you who don't understand levels of government and internal rules, which is a good amount of people. So I'm not even going to act like this is the thing, because I learned more about this stuff preparing for this show. But not to say I didn't know about this level, but there's other intricacies that I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know we did this. But yes. So the Speaker of the House is a very important role in our government, right? I actually put like the full role of what a Speaker of the House does and why they're important in the show notes for today. Because I just want to talk about like this is why I'm talking about this topic today. The Speaker of the House basically brings people back to the floor and makes the House actually run, right? Like, there is always a leader in these bodies. Every government body in the legislative branch has a leader. The Senate has a leader. The legislative body has a leader. There is a leader in city council. He's council president. There's a leader in the House in Pennsylvania that is Senator McClinton. Like, there are leaders in all of these spaces, right? And in the federal level, that is major, right? We're talking about federal, like the whole freaking country. So what just happened makes it major. So on October 3rd, the House voted to remove the Speaker of the House for the United States of America. And there is nobody there. I mean, we have a person that's a stand-in, but there is nobody there, right? And that means that they removed this man on October 3rd. It was brought forth by a man from Florida, by a Florida man. Of course, a Florida man brought this forward, Rep. Matt Gaetz. Him and 8 Republicans, along with a bunch of other Democrat girls, are always doing something. They got together and they voted to take out McCarthy. Now, here's the backstory. Now, when Kevin McCarthy decided that he was going to run for Speaker of the House, it was a big old debacle. They had to go through 15 rounds of votes. I remember following this even before I got into, getting ready for this show. Even before I decided to do it Unabridged. This happened earlier this year. I was following this on NPR and reading articles and being like, they made this white man go through 15 rounds of votes before they would actually confirm him being Speaker of the House. So he already had a testy beginning. And one thing that he conceded to them in order to become Speaker of the House was that one individual could bring forth a freaking vote to remove you if they were upset. You know how much of a thin line of error that gives you? Well, they exercised it. And Mr. Gaetz was like, well, bet, I'm using my power this time because McCarthy decided to work with Democrats to keep the government open. If you remember in my last episode, we talked about how the government was potentially going to shut down. It did not, because McCarthy was able to work with Democrats in order to keep it open for another 45 days. Not really that great, especially as we talk more about the story, you'll see why. But he worked with those Democrats to keep the government open. The Republican girlies who are just far left, like the ones who are still talking about Trump, they were like, boy, we told you. We warned you. I'm sorry I keep touching this. These headphones, I hate them. Anyway, boy, we warned you. You work with these Democrats, and we are going to take you out. And the crazy thing is McCarthy was like, bring it on. Bring it on, girls. I'm ready for you. Like, I'm sorry, this is so funny to me, because when you read about it, like, he wasn't like calling people and being like, you got my back, girls. He just had his base of people. They were rallying around him. They were telling him how great he was. And I guess that's what your girls do when they try to support you when you're going through a tough time. But they should have been doing some other things, because they got him right together, got that vote, and on a 216 to 210 vote, the House voted to remove his behind on October 3rd. Now the House has no speaker. Now we're in this big old hodgepodge trying to figure out who's going to take his seat. And while we are waiting to figure out that happen, major decisions are put on hold. For example, that good old government shutdown. Yeah, we only got 45 days before we are back at that point again. And we can't reconvene the floor until we have a Speaker of the House in order to either extend that period or figure out what we're going to do with the budget. So that's on hold. If you've been listening and paying attention to national news, there's a war going on in Ukraine. United States has been helping out in that war in Ukraine. United States is being asked to help out more in that war in Ukraine. That funding is also being held up in the government budget that we're trying to still decide. So we may not even be able to give these people any more money, whether you agree with it or not, until after we get another Speaker of the House. Remember everything that's going on in Hawaii with the girls and the hurricanes because, the world's coming to an end? Yeah, a lot of that funding will likely be on hold too. Some funding was released in the last continuance budget, but they're going to need more. That fire was massive, and we have massive hurricanes that are happening across the nation on a consistent basis. The world's ending. I know this is an inspiration show, but I mean, girl, look at the climate. But I digress. So right now, they removed that white man, and we have nobody. And now all these Republicans are going crazy trying to figure out who it's going to be, and we're going to keep on watching. But this is what I said. This is what I said the last time. The federal girls are always doing too much, and this is why it becomes a lot. So yes, that has been Let's Get Into It for this week. I'm so excited to get into our next segment, our unabridged journey with Miss Darrien. We're going to get into that after a quick break, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much. Unabridged is filmed and recorded at the MQ Factory Studio located in Manayunk. Founded by photographer Ricky Codio, the 8,000 square foot studio is available for rent for photo, video, and podcast productions, as well as film screenings and social events. The creative space has been designed with photographers, filmmakers, and creative individuals in mind and is customizable to the needs of your production. Visit www.mqfactory.com to learn more. And let's get back to the show. So, hello, Darrien. I'm so excited. This is our second interview for Unabridged, our second leg of the Unabridged journey. Yes. And I am so excited to be joined by this young lady here today. Again, y'all know I'm going to have like, oh, I'm cheating because I'm only using people I know, but that's fine. Like, whatever. We're building up here, and I think just like, Sierra, our first amazing episode, I think Darrien is an extremely amazing example for what it means to live your life unabridged, right? To live your full self and to just create those stuff for yourself and your community by doing that. So let's get right into it. So Darrien, tell the girls who you are.
Well, for starters, I just want to say thank you. And if you are listening to this, Dom is dope. So go watch every episode that comes out after this as well, please. But yeah, Dom is like a big sister to me, so this is an honor to be here, and I'm so excited that you are venturing out into different activities that are a representation of who you are and sharing your life.
Thank you so much.
But who am I? So my name is Darrien Johnson. I am a native of Philadelphia, Strawberry Mansion to be exact, North Philly with an F. Okay. Yes, I'm 25 years old. I come from a very large family, and really I'm just a lover of community. All things community. Coming from a background from North Philadelphia, you see certain things that just puts a fire under you, that makes you motivated to want to create a change in the world. And so I kind of took that and ran with it.
I love that. So the reason why I wanted you to be on the show, outside of just being a dope person, is an amazing, business that you just started, yes. Which I think is, again, another great example of what it means to be unabridged, but then also the other aspect of the show is what we're calling duality in action, right? Yes. And I think the two aspects of your company that you bring together, people don't necessarily, see them together a lot, right? Right. So, tell people about the Community Curator, what your business is and, what you provide for people.
Definitely. So back in 2020, I was attending Columbia University, where I was working to get my master's in nonprofit management, and unfortunately I had to withdraw from the semester because I couldn't afford to pay my tuition. Mm-hmm. So when I dropped out, I asked myself, what do I know how to do? Because coming from North Philly, we know how to figure things out. So I said, I know how to help people. And that kind of led to me working on some different campaigns and with different social impact leaders in Philly. And once I realized that I could profit from this and help people, it turned into a business. And so the Community Curator is a social impact consulting firm in which we help Philadelphia leaders establish, expand, and evaluate their impact in the city of Philadelphia.
Go ahead, Mr. Statement. Okay.
Thank you, yes. So even though we're not a not-for-profit, we are mission-based still. Mm-hmm. And we're committed to helping other people further their mission in the city of Philadelphia, with essentially helping people to evaluate what does your philanthropic footprint look like. When we talk about science and the consumption of certain things, we can measure our footprint then, but how are you really serving your best self in regards to these organizations, and are you doing all that you can to help someone else? So it's it's not an option living here in Philadelphia. You kind of have to do what you can.
Right. It's a hustler mentality. It's very much ingrained into us, and yes. I think I give it to the North Philly girls, but the Uptown girls, we got a little hustle on us too, Yes. But seriously, I think that's just the nature of it. We are a hustler city. We yes. always grinding.
I don't know one Philadelphia girl who got her life together that's only doing one thing. She's probably doing 5 things, whether or not it's her personal business, whether or not it's her side job. Yes. So I love that story about how you really looked at what you're good at and like how could you really flip that. So I want to talk more about that transition, right? Because you know I'm gonna post all the notes about the community curator, how you get involved, and how you use her amazing services. You gotta use her. Yes. But really, I want to talk about that transition mindset, right? Because I've been in that space right now. I am in that space right now, having to stop school because it's way too expensive. Yes. But and a lot of people have been, especially with the way our education system is. But when you're in that transition, you don't feel like, how can I create something new? You feel like you failed, low-key, right? You're like, I should just be able to kind of go through. And stopping is not always celebrated, right? It's not something that people get excited about. So, like, talk more about that, your mindset during that transition. Like, what did you even have to do to get yourself to the point where it was like, all right, this journey didn't really go how I wanted it to. Right. So now I'm going to shift to something else.
Right. Honestly, I think it starts with figuring out who you are as an individual and how you work and navigate through certain instances. So we're Aries, since I know we share that in common, and we're like pretty head on, and we like to live life in the fast lane. But different experiences, such as like getting into 2 car accidents within like 6 months, showed me, and like dropping out of school, that you gotta slow down. And so the biggest lesson that I had to learn was that I needed to listen, and I needed to be present, and I needed to remember my breath, and understand that everything was in alignment. And so even if I needed to take a break from school, that wasn't necessarily a break from my success or where I was going, it was just a pivot on the journey. And so starting to embrace those things, you know, I realized that everything that I'm doing is a curation, no matter how it looks, as long as I'm coming back with that full intention to help others and further the mission.
No, I think that's amazing. I think really tapping into, you know, who your true self is and using that as a navigator is not easy for the girl.
It's not.
Especially as Black women, right? Because we have so many outside factors that are already telling us as women who we should be. Yes. But as Black women, it's like this other level of, you gotta be amazing or dope, or else people gonna look at you like you ain't shit. Exactly. So, I don't know, like, talk about how you kind of maintain that kind of mindset as well, too, because I want the listeners to actually, like, take one nugget from like, okay, I can try this too on my own.
Yes. Well, for starters, mental health is very important. And as Black women, I feel that we receive it 10 times harder. And so you really have to set boundaries for yourself when you're going to rest, when it's going to be your on days, when it's going to be your off days, and sticking to that. I mean, honestly, I started to invest in my foods that I was eating, so I started to change my diet. I started to go to the gym, so I'm about to hit 2 years straight in the gym. Like, that's, you know, really big. But just starting to work in myself holistically. And once I realized that how I treat myself dictates how everybody else around me treats me, the respect was up. And everything started to align, and like Creator just started to pour into my life, because she, Creator Universe was saying, like, you're listening now, and so I'm ready to deliver. And so you just gotta show that you're ready. You gotta be okay with taking the breaks, okay with taking time, okay with reflecting, doing all the things that brought us light in our childhood. So drawing, painting, taking walks in the park. I love nature. These are all things that help to pour into myself so I can pour into others.
I love that. I think that those are like very tangible mental health things that we can all work into our daily day. Yes. And I think that's one thing that I loved about watching your journey, because I feel like I saw both of those transitions happen. Yes. And like one thing that us Aries have too is our perfectionists. I was hearing about community curators launched like 15 times. Yes. But the girls heard about Unabridged launch about 15 times, right? Because it was, you know, getting to that level of what we felt, right? But then also like being able to take care of yourself at the same time. And I feel like when you launched that, you were like launching the new Darrien too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was like a rebranding. And then when I also had to realize that the curation part is the fact that it's an art. You don't tell an artist, hurry up with that painting. You allow them to do what they do. And I think one of the biggest things as a curator and having my own hours, I get the time to just think. Like, people hire me to give them my good ideas, and then they run with it. And I'm not like charging them, you know, a hand and a leg. I think that's the same. Or it's a foot and a leg. Right. But, you know, I'm meeting them where they are, and I'm showing them, like, I don't even have to be in this picture. But once you recognize potential, you're like, oh, I can do this, and I know this person. That's community curation.
I love that so much. Oh my goodness. I think, and the reason why I started out by saying that people don't usually see that together, because like a lot of the work that people usually do in advocacy spaces in community it's not, they don't see it as something that was curated. They see it as like, oh, it's a struggle and now we're responding.
Yes.
Like that's really how people really see that work. But you really take it out of it. So talk more about that idea of what curation is for you.
Definitely. So for starters, philanthropy and how it appears in the Black community is very different than how it appears in other communities. In the Black community specifically, philanthropy has been around for years. And that could be as simple as helping your sister take her braids out, you know, giving your homegirl or your neighbor some ketchup, right? Helping somebody get a ride home. It looks very different. And so when we change that like attitude shift around giving and then make it not even necessarily professional but sustainable, and we like unlock the dots between the community, that's what curation is. Because curation or creation means I'm going to come into this environment and I'm going to create something that doesn't already exist. But curation is this idea of, okay, we have a barber here and we have this school here, you know, this barber and hairstylist will possibly give away free hairstyles for back to school giveaway, or this Chick-fil-A is up the street and then we have this program that has a 6 weeks after school program. Chick-fil-A could say 1 week, you know, we're going to give some chicken nuggets to your kids. Like, what are these corporations doing, you know, and these organizations and institutions doing to move the needle and create that impact? So that's the idea of curation, not starting over, but using what already exists to make sense.
And I think that is something that a lot of business owners, especially when you are, even if you're a creative, right? Or like, I feel like anybody who like took an idea from beginning to inception to I'm going to give it to the world as a creative. Even if that's, you know, you're a plumber, but you're a creative, right?
Exactly.
But my thing is like somewhere along the way you get so bogged down in the product and making the product right that you don't think of all the things that's going into it to actually make your product what it is. And I feel like that's a lot of what you're doing for these individuals.
Absolutely. It's really just being that outside person to come in and say, I see what you're doing, and I see, you know, what other organizations are doing, because I was able to see that at Columbia, you know, sitting at the table sometimes being the only Black girl in the classroom, right? So it was different, like, oh, I've been doing this since I, you know, was 15, Family Foundation paid for me to go to school, I'm just sitting on the board, and I'm like, we don't have that.
Right.
Shout out to Thomas and Woods, though, because we have that.
Right. Listen, we're building that generation of what we want to see, okay?
Yes, but it's happening.
No, that's so real. Oh my goodness. And I feel you on the Columbia piece, because sometimes like I remember being in those classrooms, and maybe I wasn't the only Black person, but I was the only person who worked in the public sector from Philadelphia, and I wasn't resource rich, and my company wasn't paying for that program. Like any money that I was paying for, any things that I was getting, any credits I was paying for was coming out of pocket from me. They'd be like, okay, the city of Philadelphia, no, they cannot. Exactly. They cannot. And I think, again, that goes back to that hustle mentality that we all had. It's like, well, I'm gonna get this done, but I'm gonna get this done on my own time.
Exactly.
So I think that's amazing, and I think, you know, having that connection that you do with individuals, because it does take a connection, it takes a level of trust. So can you talk about like what that trust building process is like? I'm sorry, I'm a little all over the place, but I feel like, you know, the more we talk about it, it's like there's levels to this, right? It's like one thing I hate is just like people who consult and don't necessarily think about who the people are. And like, something that consultants do, especially consultants that are not of color, they give you very cookie cutter reports and say, this is what you should do. Yeah. It works for everybody, it's going to work for you. And when you're talking to Black people in places, it's like, that's not going to work. Exactly. I don't have a natural network that I can raise from that's going to start me off $50,000. Maybe my network give me 10, but when you're having someone who understands that background, you're like, okay, well, can they give you 5, and then they'll give you 20 minutes of their time on the weekend. Right? So talk about, like, number one, how you build that trust with those individuals, and then talk about what it means to, like, meet people where they are.
Right, definitely. So for starters, if anyone doesn't know what the term trust-based philanthropy is, really that's the idea of investing in our nonprofit leaders and trusting that they are experts at the problems that they're solving. So when we talk about investing into our communities, we really have to listen to the people who are at the forefront, right? And understanding, like, even such things such as grant making, right? It's cool, it gives money, because, you know, back in the day, the issue was we don't have money. Now organizations have money, but they don't have the capacity. So if I'm trusting you and I'm giving you this money, it also means that I'm going to help you to build sustainable solutions. After you get the money, I'm not just going to leave and then, you know, graduate a new cohort of fellows just because, you know, for my own name or for the sake of my reputation. I'm going to stick with you, and I'm going to see, okay, if your mission is to help young children and induce their esteem in sports and academia, I'm coming back and I'm asking, okay, where's that young man at? You know, does he need now a scholarship to get to school? We got him to college, but how many Black kids are making it to college but can't afford to stay there.
Right.
It's like that's what trust-based philanthropy looks like. It's building the solutions and looking at it holistically, and not even saying, all right, I did it, but now I'm pulling my whole community and village on and asking, what can you do? You got this, you got that, I got this organization, and that's what that curation like is. Yeah.
I love that because that's really like that's like a double-edged sword for that community aspect of it, right? Because you're not just saying I'm curating community, but I'm also helping to build out that community.
Yes.
That's going to be the support system for you.
Yes.
And again, back to anybody who started any idea, you know how important that village around you is when you're creating anything. Like even just being in the studio today, I was telling Darrien how we got here. Like I know Ricky who's the owner of the MQ Factory because he was my mom was his teacher, right?
Yes.
And because she kept that relationship with him and saw him building, now he's able to build with me and we're doing some amazing things together. So I mean, community is so tied, especially as people of color, to everything that we do. Even when you're a loner Aries who likes to be by yourself sometimes, like that community still is so important. So no, thank you for saying that. So I want to talk a little bit about you. So you talked about like you were in Columbia, but talk about like what was your journey there, like all that stuff from North Philly to Columbia to now the community curator.
Yes. So, well, for right starters, I've always been in the nonprofit sector. And, it's funny because when I got to Columbia, they asked, how long have you been working in the NP sector? And, some people say 3-4 years. And I'm like, no, like I was a child that was getting the free book bags. I was getting the food. Like my parents didn't have it. Thank God I always had both of them in my life. But times were still hard. My dad had 9 kids. My mom had 4. So with that being said, started off at like 3-4 years old in Freedom Theater. And then I went on to do Freedom Schools. And Freedom Schools carried me all the way until I was able to be a site coordinator and then a program manager at the age of 21. Like Freedom Schools, Ujima Peace Center was one of my first clients. So being able to give back. But again,
before the next part, tell the girls a little about what Freedom Schools is.
Oh, definitely. So Freedom Schools is, Philadelphia Freedom Schools is a chapter of an organization of larger Freedom Schools, which was created in the summer of 1964 by organization of SNCC. And so you might be familiar with some people such as Martin Luther King or Huey P. Newton, even though he was with the Black Panthers as well. You have Ella Baker. You have all these individuals who came together and said, you know what, our children aren't learning. And they're not learning in a liberating way. And so Freedom Schools was a space where white allies as well, white Jewish allies, came together with these black leaders to teach our children and to teach our adults things that would help to cultivate the community. And sometimes they weren't even in traditional classrooms. They might have been in churches, on farms, inside people's basements. But the fact is, our children were learning. And so when you have things like Philadelphia Freedom Schools, shout out to Brother Boomy, who's my mentor, who see people like me and carry me and they invest in me and they teach me leadership things. Shout out to Isaiah Thomas, who had me knocking doors for him, at 15, 16 years old. That teaches esteem and it teaches confidence. And so when I had those people and those institutions around me, by the time I got to Delaware State, I still thought I had it together. And I didn't. I remember interviewing for an organization that declined me because I didn't know what professional attire was. I'm like, dang, I've been so involved, leading marches, doing all these things, and I still don't get it. So that still was a struggle. But all of these experiences, joining my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, then becoming chapter president, it was all in the alignment of teaching me to be a leader. So to answer your first question about, once I got to Columbia, I'm like, okay, I got it. I didn't get the fellowship that I applied for, so I'm paying for Columbia out of pocket, as I already mentioned. But when I was there, I felt so confident because I had built up this image and this person of who Darrien was. And then I sat at those tables with the little white girls, and they're like, no, you don't know this term, you don't know this. And it was just like, okay. And so after a while, my confidence started to really wither away. But it wasn't until my capstone, in which we were assigned to an organization that I'm not going to mention because we did have to sign certain documents for it because we created a strategy for them. But this certain organization, national, had a mission to reach more Black and underrepresented children in communities with certain health issues. And they needed a strategy created for them. And I remember making certain recommendations and the white girls telling me no, that's not professional, that's not something we've seen, let's try this strategy. And the teacher gave us a bad grade on our draft. Shout out to Ali Webb, she's dope. She's a great professor. And I remember she had made me a co-manager of the project. And she pulled me to the side on Zoom, so in a safe room. And she was like, you're not exercising who you are and what you know. And I needed to hear that. And I promise you that following week I came back and I started telling them, listen, we need to start going to the schools. We need to start knocking on the doors. We got to pass out pamphlets. We got to have a youth leadership board. We need to, have community programs. And it was like the lights started clicking, like, I already do this, right? And I just needed to be confident in what I was doing and understanding that this can even happen on a national level for wider scale organizations. And so that really affirmed to me that, you know, I was in the right space and doing the right things at the right time.
I freaking love that so much. I love that. Again, see, this is what we're talking about, the underprivileged journey, because like that literally was a lot of the mindset in doing this. Because like there was definitely a point I remember, especially working in politics, which, you know, all the girls have their respectability in politics. Nonprofit sector has. I always say the white woman is the white man of nonprofit. So you had that there with those white girls. I had that with white men in politics, and it was a moment I remember where I was just like being my funny, goofy self in a meeting when I was with another, I forgot who we were talking to, and like we really left with a deeper connection than I ever had in that space before, and that's because I was looking at, you know, who I was, and I was being the person that I am with you, with an Isaiah, with my, you know, my mom, like that full self, and like was realizing that this is actually what I need to be doing, because that's how I build the deepest connections. And I love that was literally the aha moment for you as well, is that this is the work that I have already been done. This is something that's already ingrained in me. I should not hide that, because by hiding that, I'm literally keeping important aspects away from people. I'm literally not showing up in the world as I should be, which means that the world is lacking something. The world is seriously lacking something. Oh my God, I love that so much. See, I love when this thing kind of just click together. That's like one of those moments. Like, if I knew how to use this sound thing, I would just put one of them in here. Like, let me not do that. I might put some crickets or something like that. Hold on, let me try. Did it work? No, see, this is too much. I'm not even going to try it. But no, I love that so much. And I think another point that I really wanted to, like, to reiterate was, or just to really put a head on, was the fact that a lot of the experiences that you had in your life, like, prepared you for where you are right now. Even the negative ones. So like, and I think that a lot of times people see those veering off of the world as not as a part of their journey, but like there were so many like nuggets and pieces that you take from every aspect of your journey that to when you get to the completed part. And you look back and you're like, damn, I really needed to go through all of those things to be ready for where I'm here right now. So talk to me a little more about that. Like,
definitely. You know, I always had this saying that like you wake up the next day and you restart your life. And then I'm thankful for my partner, because he is somebody who helped me to understand, like, no, you restart your life in every breath. Like, you know, the same way we say bless you, and you say, oh, you should wash your life when you sneeze. Like, it's the same way when you breathe. Like, the Creator deemed for you and asked you to be worthy of breathing in this next second. So what are you going to do with that opportunity? Like, the past is behind us. At that point, we can't change it. We can only use it as our motivation to, you know, catapult us into the world and into our purpose. And so, yeah, like, I don't see it as breaks. I don't see it as stops. I don't see it as pauses. Everything is happening for me. And when I keep that mindset, I'm able to help others believe that as well. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I could be dealing with just as an entrepreneur, and just me as a person coming from where we come from, recognizing my potential, is just having other people from our village recognize that they're seeing potential as well. Like, yo, you can do this too. Like, I know we come from the same background, but, you know, it's not impossible. I can help you get your money up. I can help you get that motivation. And so
I know a lot of times when you're building out a business like this, especially where one that a lot of people have never heard of before, or that's very much like an original idea, you do have a lot of people who push back on that idea. Can you talk about ways that you negate that, even if it's not towards those people, but literally how you do that within yourself to keep yourself going?
Definitely. I think the first point about it is instilling trust within myself, and so, you know, maintaining that faith is important to me. And that also looks like investing in certain opportunities to find my tribe. So being in certain spaces, something that I was recently able to attend with the Black Nonprofit Chief Executives of Philadelphia Summit. And so being able to see a room of nonprofit leaders and social impact leaders, like over 100 people, is like, okay, this is an existing thing. Like, this is real, and I belong here, and I'm meant to be here. So constantly putting myself in those spaces. You know, shout out to United Way, Urban Affairs Coalition, who are creating those spaces for Black people, you know, who resonate with those same problems and may feel like I'm not represented, or, you know, there's not a space for me at the table. They're creating it, and I feel that we just have to show others, like, you know, it is possible and it's needed, and watch what I do with it. And, you know, some of those naysayers, they just have to see the results. Like you said, people were hearing about Community Curator launching for months, really for years, right? But once they saw the pictures, it was like, oh, you launched the business. Oh, you're not teaching at the schools anymore. And it's like, no, I've been talking about it, but you just had to see it to believe it. And now people see it, now they need me. So that's just how I see it.
You know, sometimes you gotta put that on the paper for the people to be like, okay, I get what you're doing now. And unfortunately, like I literally we just talking about this in my last episode, was that Philly is such a city of like, you gotta prove yourself to us first just to get to that loyalty. But once you do that, that is unmatched, right? And I think that's why, you know, people be like, if you can make it in Philly, you can make it in a lot of places. And I granted, like, you know, the song probably is New York or whatever, but no, I'm like, New York, y'all be holding up your legs for anybody. Philly girls, we are very like, who are you? Take me on a 14 dates. I need a couple, you know, shopping sprees, and then we'll bust it open. But like, that's really how the Philly girls be. But I think that really, it gives us, especially as business owners in the space who, you know, have, you know, built things, it gives you like a level of tenacity that is unmatched.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I see that in you. I hope people take from the show like what Philly Jones are. Like,
and on that point, I just want to mention, because like that idea of being unabridged, like being my full holistic self, like people have never seen the young black girl that's like solving her own problems. We've always needed a handout or have to ask for something. So now that I'm showing you like it's possible, and I do this, and I got locks, like, you know, it's different and people not used to it.
Yes. Yes, I love that. It's like you gotta really just be your full self through this space.
Yes.
It's like pretending or trying to keep up that narrative is only going to make that journey harder.
Exactly.
It's gonna make it so much harder.
Oh my God, time for that.
It's like, no, you gonna get this joy mentality every now and then, but it's gonna be beneficial for who you are.
Yes.
No, I love that so much. So before we close out, I do want to talk about two more things. So, like when you were really going through this idea of the community curator, what were some like key components that you felt that it kind of like nicked for you, where you was like, oh, this is for me? Like I know that sometimes like we look for signs of the universe or things like that ourselves, but like maybe give me like two examples where you were like, okay, this is it. Like this is definitely the path.
Honestly, seeing the results of my impact. Walking into an organization that has been having programming for 10 years but never had a sign-in sheet or a brochure to articulate their mission, but they're doing it, it's like, oh bro, you're doing it, and now I'm gonna get you the money because this is what they want from you, right? So it's like being able to see the impact, seeing the smiles on the faces of the children at the giveaways or in certain programs, seeing our math scores boost, you know, shout out to Black Girls Love Math, like this is real and it's exciting, and I'm able to see the communities that I'm able to shape just by being my most natural self and helping others do that. So I think that's the most rewarding part about this work, is just seeing the trickling effect, and then also knowing that, you know, as a consultant, I'm not always supposed to be in your life, and I think that's one thing that I'm trying to exercise to my clients, is like kind of like learning to ride a bike, and once you got it, you take the training wheels off and it's all you, and you shine.
I love that, and I know like it's kind of hard to like a baby. Like it's like, this is my baby now. I gotta let her go into the world. Like I can't do this.
Exactly.
You know, I love that. So if somebody were like, I want to get community curated, how did they start their process? What does that look like?
Well, for starters, I would ask you, are you a social impact leader? Because the community curator works with individuals, businesses, and organizations. But you have to have some type of mission or giving back to the community. So that's first. And then secondly, we are working on a community curator checklist in which we are able to kind of like vet our target audience out, just because there's certain things that you have to be serious about when you're doing this work. You know, you have to be able to put the time in, you have to be able to do the research. A big part that I'm learning is you have to be able to want to be financially literate. Like, you can't run an organization and not know about money. It's not just for the accountant to do. So, you know, being able to be willing to learn and have those practices are all things that we ask of our partners. And then lastly, really we're just working on developing our website, and you know, you just go fill out an inquiry form. We'll get back to you. We are filling out our team right now, so taking on some high school students of those that I used to teach to bring them on and to teach them these skills. So, you know, I have a student who wants to be a lawyer. I'm going to pair him with our client that needs the community liaison. I have students who want to get into graphic design and PR. I'm going to help have them do social media coordination for our clients. So like being able to just know that when you're coming into the community curator, A, you're a community curator yourself. Everybody's a community curator when you understand that responsibility. And B, you're giving back to a ton of communities. So you're not investing in me, take away my image. You are literally investing in the city of Philadelphia.
I love that. I love that. Now, before we close out, I give the girls a platform. So what are we plugging right now? What's coming up? What are we looking out for? I know the website launches once. We got that check. So what else are we plugging?
We'll be having our launch party November 17th. Shout out to Immortal Studios, CJ Wolf, doing great, amazing work. But you can find us on Instagram at The Community Curator. We're also on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. My personal is Miss Parallel. If anybody wants to follow me, I do a lot of health and wellness over there as well. But yeah, those are all the tags, and apply to a couple of fellowships as well. So hopefully you'll see my face a lot more, because I'm excited to just continue to further my learning and pour it all back. So.
I love that, Darrien. This is going to be my top favorite right now interview. I mean, granted, it's number 2.
Yes.
It's like, you're my favorite child. I only have one child. But no, seriously, yes. I love this conversation so much. And it was literally, when I thought about this is exactly what I thought we were going to get from this dialogue. And I hope that everyone listened, truly heard everything Darrien was saying, because so many levels of this you could apply to your life, even if you're not in the nonprofit space, and even if you're not trying to start your own business, even if you're just trying to say, I want to get my life together, I want to get myself together. Right. I think you gave so many important nuggets for that. I want to link a lot of these steps that you put in your show notes, and I'm gonna tag your Instagram, because your Instagram be giving the girls stuff. I'm like, I am not eating right out here, okay? You see what Darrien eating today? So no, but seriously, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, sis. I always appreciate you, and thank you for what you do for our community, because the girls need it.
Absolutely.
They really do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank y'all for listening. We'll be back on our next segment.
Period.
Yay! That was so good! Great job! Oh my god!
I was so nervous.
No, you're so good. And you spoke quietly. You spoke very it was getting very calm and okay, yes, you're gonna listen in. I want to put you in and listen. We need that.
Listen.
And I get excited. I get really hyped. So no, I need that balance. So thank you so much. It was so good.
Yeah, I feel good. I feel real good.
You should. You did an amazing job.
Can you take our picture?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm gonna hold a mug.